When mild-mannered bookstore clerk Elliot Crane inherits an old, broken music box from his estranged Aunt Lydia, a woman the family barely mentions and whom many suspect of having lost her mind, his friends mock the inheritance. The box doesn't work, it's rusted shut, and worse, it plays no tune. Just silence. But Elliot feels something, a strange pull, as if the box is watching him. After a sleepless night and a few failed attempts to force it open, the box finally plays. Not a melody, but a series of mechanical clicks, deliberate, almost rhythmic. He records it out of curiosity. Days later, following a chance encounter with a retired banker who once knew Aunt Lydia, Elliot discovers the sounds match the exact tone sequence used in old safety deposit vaults, driven by obsession and increasingly haunted by dreams of his aunt whispering, "You are the last thread." Elliot follows the trail to a forgotten vault. Inside, he uncovers Lydia's carefully hidden secrets, a stack of handwritten journals, surveillance photos, and cryptic letters that hint at a lifetime of manipulation, betrayal, and a crime that was never solved, but someone else knows about. The box. And they've been waiting for Elliot to unlock it. Elliot Crane hadn't spoken to Aunt Lydia in almost 20 years. In truth, he hadn't spoken about her in just as long. His mother referred to her as the one who vanished into madness, while his father always changed the subject. So when the solicitor called with news of her death and an inheritance, Elliot assumed it was some distant technicality. A forgotten photograph, maybe. A few antique books. Instead, he received a cardboard box with a rusted, silent music box inside. The thing looked pitiful. Its paint was chipped, the small crank on the side wouldn't turn, and the once elegant filigree was barely visible beneath the grime. His co-workers at the bookstore took turns mocking it. "Maybe it only plays for ghosts," joked Brian. "Or maybe it's just broken trash with a story your crazy aunt made up." Elliot laughed along. But later that night, alone in his apartment, he placed the music box on the kitchen table and stared. There was something unsettling about how it refused to open. Not stubbornness, a resistance. Like it was guarding something. He tried oiling the crank. Nothing. He tapped it, shook it lightly, held it up to his ear. Silence. Then, just as he turned away to brush his teeth, a faint mechanical click echoed from the other room. Not music. Just a single, short sound. He froze. He didn't sleep. The next morning, he brought the box to the repair shop across town. The old man behind the counter barely glanced at it before muttering, "They don't make these anymore. Can't be fixed if it doesn't want to play." If it doesn't want to play? Elliot asked. Some things break because they're old. Others because they've been silenced. Back at home, Elliot placed the music box on his nightstand. Days passed. Every so often, it would emit a soft series of clicks, never more than a few seconds. He recorded one session out of curiosity and sent it to a friend who worked in sound engineering. "That's not music," she said. "That's a pattern. Almost like code?" He didn't know what to do with that information. Not until a man came into the bookstore. He was tall, well-dressed, and wore a lapel pin Elliot recognized from a bank logo. The man asked about a rare edition of The Count of Monte Cristo, then casually mentioned Lydia. "She used to come into my branch every month. Always used the same vault. Said it made her feel like she still existed." Elliot felt something shift. "What vault?" The man smiled. "We phased out that model years ago. Used to be opened by audio sequence." Elliot's throat dried. Audio? Mechanical. Tones. Like a tune. But with clicks and rhythm. Real secure back in the day. That night, Elliot played the recording again. Then again. He noticed the pauses between clicks. The repetition. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. His aunt hadn't given him a memory. She'd given him an entry he didn't tell anyone. Point 2. Days later, he found the address of the bank. It had been turned into a yoga studio, but the vault downstairs remained. The manager let him in, mostly out of curiosity. "Nobody's accessed these in over a decade," she said. "We kept a few units sealed for sentimental reasons." Unit 307. Elliot stood in front of it, music box in hand, phone on speaker. He played the recording, click, pause. Click, click, the mechanism responded, the vault door creaked open, and inside wasn't money. It wasn't jewelry. It was paper. Hundreds of pages. Handwritten. Stacks of envelopes. A shoebox of Polaroids. Point 1. Folder was labeled, "If Elliot finds this, he deserves to know." He hadn't even opened it when the studio manager called down the stairs. "Ah, sir? Someone's asking for you. Says he's a friend of your aunt's." Elliot turned cold. He hadn't told anyone he was coming here. Elliot didn't go upstairs. Not immediately. He waited, ears sharpened for footsteps, voices, any indication that this friend of his aunt's was real. The yoga studio was too quiet. No murmur of casual conversation, no squeaking of floorboards. Just the faint hum of old air vents. And the vault door's mechanical breath, slowly retreating into silence. He clutched the folder. "If Elliot finds this, he deserves to know." The handwriting was unmistakably Lydia's, severe, slanted, always pressing too hard on the page. He recognized it from childhood birthday cards, cryptic notes written in riddles, tucked between the lines of well wishes. His mother used to intercept them and quietly throw them away. He opened the folder. The first page was a letter. Not addressed to him, not to anyone. It was a confession, written in the first person, with no names. "They told me I had to disappear. I chose silence, not cowardice. I buried the evidence in fragments, trusting only the one too soft to be seen as a threat." Elliot read it twice before realizing she meant him. He was the soft one. The harmless nephew. The afterthought of family functions. Below the letter was a map. Hand-drawn. It marked several places in the city: a park bench near the train station, a church basement, a public library archive room. Next to each was a single number, scrawled in red ink. Coordinates. Dates, he didn't know yet. There was also a photograph, grainy, black and white, of a man and a young girl. The man's face had been crossed out with heavy pen marks. But the girl looked familiar. Elliot couldn't place her age, but her eyes, they were wide with fear. He flipped the photo over. Lydia's scrawl again. Her name was Madeline. She knew too much. He was about to open the second envelope when the door to the vault room creaked. Someone had come down the stairs. Elliot shoved the papers back into the folder, stuffed it into his coat, and quietly stepped behind one of the thick and used vault doors. He held his breath as footsteps echoed through the chamber, then a voice. Calm. Masculine. Almost rehearsed. "Mr. Crane? I believe you have something of mine." Elliot didn't answer. More footsteps. Slow. Confident. "I knew Lydia," the man said. "She wasn't well, you understand. She lived in delusions. Thought everyone was out to get her. Sad, really. But she was brilliant, in her own way." Elliot peeked around the edge of the vault. The man was tall, in his 60s, impeccably dressed. Not a stranger off the street. Not someone who stumbled into the past by accident. He knew exactly what he was looking for. The man turned slightly, scanning the room. "She told you a story, didn't she? About a secret. A betrayal. A crime that no one believed. She was good at that. Weaving narratives." Elliot's pulse was hammering. The folder felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Let me make this simple," the man continued. "You give me what she left behind, and I leave. No drama. No questions." Elliot didn't move. "Or," the man said, a little smile forming. "You try to understand what she was really part of. And you realize far too late that you were never meant to survive this." Suddenly, the yoga studio manager's voice echoed faintly from upstairs. "Sir? You okay down there?" The man turned. "Fine, thank you. Just reminiscing." Elliot used that moment to slip through the back of the vault corridor, into the maintenance tunnel the manager had shown him earlier. He emerged 2 blocks away, in an alley behind a bakery. No one followed. He walked until his legs burned, until the cold air numbed his panic. That night, he spread everything on the floor of his apartment: the maps, the letters, the photo of Madeline, and the envelope he hadn't opened yet. Inside was a single cassette tape, labeled only March 12th. The night everything changed. Elliot didn't own a cassette player, but he knew someone who did, and she owed him a favor. The apartment smelled like lavender and burnt toast. Elliot had forgotten how strange Lena's place always felt, suspended in time. She greeted him in her signature mismatched socks and a scarf. "Even though it was July, you look like you saw a ghost," she said, then eyed the cassette in his hand. "Or found one." "Both," he replied. Lena was a sound archivist, a former flame, and, most importantly, one of the few people he trusted to hear whatever was on the tape. They hadn't spoken in months. He didn't have to explain. She just led him to the old reel-to-reel machine, blew dust from the deck, and slid the cassette into place. The tape clicked. A faint hiss, then Lydia's voice. "This is Lydia Crane. The date is March 12th. I don't know how much longer I can stay quiet. If you're hearing this, it means I failed, or that you were the only one brave enough to follow the trail." Her voice was calm. Too calm. "I never meant for Madeline to see what she saw. She was just a child." But he brought her there. To the townhouse on Whitmore Street. Said it was safer if she knew early. That children could be molded, made loyal. Lena shot Elliot a look. "Do you know who she's talking about?" "No," Elliot whispered. "Not yet." Lydia continued. "There was a door in the basement. Not visible unless you knew where to press. Behind it, files. Photos. A list of names. Mine included. Some were marked with red dots, they disappeared within months. Others with green. Promotions, power. Everyone thought I'd cracked, but I just couldn't pretend anymore." The tape crackled. Then a sudden shift, a new voice. Male. "Angry, you shouldn't be recording this, Lydia." A struggle. Something falling. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Don't you touch her," Lydia hissed. A pause, then static. Lena stopped the tape. Elliot sat in stunned silence. He didn't realize he was gripping the armrest until his knuckles turned white. "She was telling the truth," he muttered. "All of it." Lena leaned forward. "This man, the one in the vault. Do you think it's him?" "I don't. No. But he's looking for me. He knew about the safety deposit box." She nodded slowly. "And if he knew Lydia made this tape, he might assume you've heard it too." Elliot stood, pacing. She said the townhouse. Whitmore Street. That's got to be the next piece. "If the files are still there, you can't go alone," Lena said. "I can't bring anyone else." Lena hesitated. Then she unplugged the machine, grabbed a small USB recorder, and handed it to him. "Copy of the tape. Hide it somewhere no one would think to look." "Like where?" She held his gaze. "Your parents' attic." Elliot exhaled sharply. They hadn't spoken in years. His relationship with them was threadbare, politeness layered over a lifetime of quiet rejection. Still, the attic was untouched. A perfect hiding place. The next day, he drove out to the suburbs, parked 2 blocks away, and waited until dusk. His parents were out. He had a spare key from years ago, taped under the rusted garden gnome. The attic was hotter than he remembered, and dustier. Boxes of his childhood sat undisturbed, trophies no one had ever cared about, notebooks filled with stories no one had read. He placed the USB recorder inside an old hollowed-out book and slid it beneath a pile of yearbooks. As he turned to leave, he caught a glint of something in the far corner, another box. He hadn't seen it before. It was marked LC. Lydia Crane. He pulled it open. Inside, more photographs. More letters. Some were addressed to his father. One of them read, in Lydia's handwriting, "Why didn't you stop him when you had the chance?" Elliot stared at the note, heart pounding. Was his father involved? Behind him, a floorboard creaked. He spun around. His mother stood at the attic entrance, eyes wide. "Elliot. What are you doing up here?" He tried to speak, but his voice failed. She looked past him, saw the open box, and her face went pale. "You weren't supposed to find that," she said quietly. Before he could answer, she whispered one word: "Run." Elliot didn't ask questions. He didn't demand explanations. He ran, down the attic steps, through the kitchen that smelled like cinnamon and silence, out the back door he hadn't used since high school. He didn't stop until he hit the sidewalk. Behind him, his mother didn't call his name. She didn't follow. She had only said one word: "Run." And that was all he needed that night. He slept in his car.by morning. His phone buzzed. One text. From an unknown number: "She warned you." That was generous. Others weren't so lucky. No name. No reply option. Just the reminder, they were watching. Elliot drove to Whitmore Street just before noon. The townhouse was still there. 3 stories. Of ivy-covered stone, nestled between a dentist's office and a bakery. To any passerby, it looked abandoned. But Elliot noticed the camera, small, almost invisible, perched above the doorway. It blinked once. Then stopped. He checked the map Lydia had left. There was an alleyway around the side. The back door had a keypad, and beside it, a faint engraving, Opus 3, Movement 1. He froze. The music box back at the car. He turned the crank. This time, it didn't click. It played. Just once, soft and ghostly, a 4-note progression that matched the rhythm from the vault recording. He mimicked the tempo on the keypad. The lock released with a soft click. Inside, the air was stale and cold. The house smelled like forgotten time. He stepped carefully over sheets draped on furniture, down a narrow hallway, until he found the stairs. Just like Lydia had said. At the base of the staircase, a framed photo, Lydia, younger, smiling beside a man Elliot didn't recognize. He stepped down into the basement. The door wasn't obvious. But he saw the outline, the faint impression of where wallpaper had been cut away. He pressed. A soft hiss. Then it opened. The room was small. Too small to have held what Lydia described. And yet, he stepped inside. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, every inch filled with files. Names, dates, surveillance photos. A red marker hung from a string on the wall. Some folders were labeled with red circles. Others green. Just like she'd said, and there, on a desk in the center, was a photo of Elliot, taken from across the street. He was leaving the bookstore. A timestamp in the corner, 2 weeks ago. His stomach turned. He flipped through the folder labeled with his name. Inside, transcripts of phone calls. Surveillance logs. Notes about his emotional stability and susceptibility to suggestion. This wasn't just about Lydia. This was about him. He reached for his phone. No signal. Then the house creaked, knotwood shifting. Footsteps. He shut the folder. Backed toward the wall. He reached for the music box in his coat pocket, not as a weapon, but as a tether to Lydia, to the reason he was here. The footsteps were slow. Measured, then a voice. The same calm one from the vault. "I told you she was brilliant," the man said, stepping into the light. But she also thought she could outsmart the system. Hide it all in melodies and metaphors. Elliot didn't speak. The man smiled. "You've seen the red files. Those were our mistakes. The ones who asked too many questions. The ones who refused to forget." He circled the desk, his hand brushing Elliot's folder. You were never meant to be one of them. But here we are. Elliot swallowed hard. What do you want from me? The man stopped. Tilted his head, nothing. Not anymore. You've already done it. Elliot frowned. You opened the box, the man said. You followed the map. And now, every piece Lydia spent her life hiding is in motion again. He turned toward the shelves, but the truth, Mr. Crane, is dangerous. It doesn't set you free. It buries you. From behind, someone grabbed Elliot's arms. A cloth pressed to his face, darkness, and silence. Elliot woke up to the sound of rain, not the soft kind that lulled you to sleep, but the violent kind that slashed against windows, demanding to be heard. His head throbbed. His arms were bound. He was in a chair, in a room he didn't recognize. Gray walls. No windows. A single hanging bulb swaying slightly from the ceiling. A man sat across from him, the same man from the vault. From the townhouse. Always watching. Always smiling. You're lucky, Elliot, he said. Others never made it this far. Elliot tried to speak. His throat was dry. Why, me? The man leaned forward. Because you were invisible. And Lydia knew it. She saw something in you the rest of the world ignored. He pulled something from his coat, the music box, still intact, still closed. She left this in your care because she thought it would protect you. But you misunderstood it. He placed the box gently on the table. It was never a code. It was a confession. Elliot's vision blurred. His memories fractured. Lydia's voice from the tape. The letters. The photograph of the girl, Madeline. The red files. The map, Madeline, Elliot whispered. The man paused. Yes. She was real. A mistake, though. Lydia tried to save her. Thought she could undo what we'd done. Elliot blinked hard. What did you do to her? Silence. The man turned the crank on the music box. It played again, only this time, Elliot heard something he hadn't before, a faint voice beneath the tune. A child's voice. You said I'd be safe. You promised. He jerked back in his chair, horrified. She's on the recording. The man nodded. Lydia embedded it. Deep enough that only someone desperate would notice. Elliot shook his head. So what is this? A message? A trap? A legacy, the man replied. He stood, walking toward the door. You're going to disappear, Elliot. Like the others. But not before you serve your purpose. And what's that? To prove it still works. The door slammed. Elliot was alone, except he wasn't. The music box was still playing, and then it clicked open. Inside wasn't just the cylinder. There was a compartment, hidden beneath the mechanism. A microchip. A slip of paper. A code. Lydia had left a second layer. Not for him. For whoever found him. Elliot smiled through the fear. She had known this would happen. She had prepared for it. He kicked the chair hard, again and again, until one leg snapped. He fell sideways, landing with a groan, but his hands struck the floor just right. The chair cracked. He wriggled free. 10 minutes later, he was out. The building was an old shipping warehouse. Abandoned, but not forgotten. He slipped through the rain, down alleyways, past dumpsters and locked gates. No one followed. Back at Lena's, soaked and shaking, he laid out everything, the chip, the code, the final recording. She didn't ask questions. She just opened her laptop and got to work. What they found was worse than Lydia had dared to explain. A network. Decades long. Hidden through charities, educational boards, and tech foundations. The red files were real. Whistleblowers, activists, children who disappeared after programs. Madeline had testified once. At 10 years old. Her words had been sealed in a private court. her file marked unstable. Lydia had rescued her and paid for it. Over the next 2 weeks, Elliot and Lena uploaded the truth, bit by bit. No embellishment. No theory. Just facts. Documents. Names. Files, and the audio. The story exploded. The authorities called it a hoax. Then a tragedy. Then silence, but people started asking questions. Whistleblowers came forward. Some files matched real missing persons cases, and then, one night, Elliot received a package at his door. No return address. Inside, a single photograph. A girl, maybe 15. Madeline, alive. On the back, a note: you gave me back my voice. It's your turn now. Elliot stared at the music box, sitting on his shelf, still silent, still waiting. He turned the crank once more. It played a new tune, and this time, it sang.